Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I thought about some more math chemistry experiments that I did as a kid. I used to love to burn stuff in the fireplace. We would be burning a log in there, and then I would toss all sorts of crap into the fireplace, papers and various materials. And so this was back in the late 1990s when we used to watch videos on cassettes, VHS cassettes. They were about that big. And they came in boxes that were cardboard and had color painted on them. And one time, for some reason, I threw a VHS cassette box into the fireplace and it exploded. And I couldn't figure out why. And at the time, um, you didn't have YouTube videos. There wasn't social media at the time, but there were these discussion groups. And I logged onto a chemistry discussion board, and I exclaimed how I had discovered that if you burn VHS boxes, they explode violently. And if you collect 10 or 20 boxes, you could really get a flame shooting in the fireplace. And one of the subscribers posted that it might be nitrocellulose. And so one night I painstakingly cut up dozens of boxes, kind of pulverizing the box to get as much surface area as possible. I lit it on fire and poof, it was like a rocket engine launch. And the whole house shook. My mom was so upset. She was upset that we were always having to clean up the fireplace. There was always a lot of burnt crap in the fireplace. Now, I wanted to see, I had started collecting coins at this point in my life, and I wanted to see if I could make the coins look like they were aged, like relics from the past, by burning them in the fireplace. And so one day with the log burning in the fireplace, I placed a bunch of coins on top of the log. Pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, all sorts of coins I could find in my pocket. And I discovered some of the pennies melted. Not all of them, though. I didn't know why. I thought it was weird that only half of the pennies would melt, the other half would stay just fine and be burnt. Of course, I now know why. In 1982, pennies used to be made of copper and they switched over to zinc. Zinc has a much lower melting point than copper. And and then after the log was all done, we would have these burnt spills of molten metal, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And of course, nowadays I actually make art out of molten zinc as well. But at the time, that was the coolest thing in the world. I was always excited when we would be burning a log in the fireplace because I would set pennies on there and collect all these spills of liquid metal at the end of the night. And so my mom was so upset. There was always something going on in the fireplace. And so I especially loved it when I would burn stuff that would explode. I would burn, I think my favorite was to burn powdered sugar in there. It would explode. And so I, back in those days, I don't think anymore because nowadays people use it to make drugs. Back in the day, a lot of pharmacies would sell powdered sulfur. And that was one of my favorite things to burn in the fireplace. It would melt, it would burn, it would give off a really bad smell, obviously. And so I also discovered that, so I wouldn't recommend doing this on any coins that you care about, but you could get your coins to discolor by putting sulfur on top of it and burning it. And I made a lot of art like that back in the day. I really should give that another try. Maybe it will be some kind of interesting art. You could probably use it to color all sorts of metals, right? Maybe silver or maybe bismuth. I wonder if bismuth can be colored with sulfur. I think silver can. That's what I did back in the day. Um, but making all sorts of art patterns with that. I need to give that another try at some point. Now, I eventually discovered that part of the reason I had some mental health challenges was that I had heavy metal toxicity, especially mercury. And I took a chelating agent called alpha lipoic acid to pull it out of my system. And I learned the way alpha lipoic acid works. is that it binds to mercury and makes it water soluble, and you urinate it out. And I wanted to see if I could see the mercury in my urine. I figured that in the urine it would be a solution of mercury ions with some other like mercury oxide, mercury chloride, or whatever it was, right? And I figured that you could extract the mercury out of that with electrolysis. So I collected about a gallon worth of my urine, and I ran electrolysis on it for several days, seeing if I could find metal that had accumulated in some way. I don't think I ever saw anything. I remember smelling chlorine gas coming out of it because urine probably has a lot of dissolved salt in it, right? But I don't remember seeing any metal coming. It was kind of disappointing. But it also made the bathroom that I was doing in this stink like crazy. But I wanted to see the mercury. I wanted to be able to feel good that all this mercury was coming out of my system. I was imagining that mercury would just drip off of the cathode of that setup. That's what I was imagining, but no such luck. I had just learned some chemistry. I was 15, 16 years old at the time. I was going to college part-time actually, and I learned about how the atom looks like with the nucleus and all that. And I thought the way alchemy works, turning other metals into gold, I thought if you had a high enough voltage, because the nucleus is made of positively charged protons and neutral neutrons. I thought if you started with lead, which is element 82, and you had a high enough negative charge, you could pull three of the protons out of the lead and it would turn into gold. And so I took uh, a piece of lead, I think it was of lead shielding that they were using in the physics lab for some kind of X-ray device, and I attached a really high voltage battery to it, and I ran a current through it to see what would happen. Well, sparks shot out of it, and nothing much happened to it. It was still lead by the end of that experiment, and so it was really disappointing. Uh, Kind of funny how alchemists chose lead because just about every other metal heavier than gold has the potential of becoming gold. The reason being that when atoms decay with alpha decay, you always lose an atomic mass of 4. Now, gold is 197, so you need to start with either 201, 205, or 209, and those elements would be mercury, thallium, and bismuth. And lead is the only one that doesn't have a stable isotope that's in the right number, right? So it's kind of funny how ancient historians chose lead. Although if you had a way to turn mercury, thallium, or bismuth into gold, I'm not sure you would want to. I think all those metals are more useful than gold in one way or another, right? So it's kind of interesting how it turned out. Uh, Another one of my favorites. You got to remember this was back in the early 2000s where we were still using a lot of disposable batteries. Double A, triple A, 9-volt batteries. I learned in my physics class that if current ran backward into a battery, it would recharge it. That's what we were taught. And I thought, would it work on a non-rechargeable battery? And one day I decided I had to try it. And to my surprise, it kind of worked. And I discovered that I was, at the time, this was back in the early 2000s, before all this great technology. I was playing chess on an electronic chess set. You would press the chessboard was like a little keyboard, and it was using double A batteries. It was eating batteries like crazy. And I discovered the trick was to top off the batteries before they were completely dead. These were alkaline batteries, and I could extend the life of a battery quite a bit. Everybody thought that was the most dangerous thing in the world, though. One day, I was at my family and I were traveling in Vancouver, BC. My cousin was going to school there. I was at a shopping mall when I pulled out the batteries of my device and plugged it into the wall to charge it. We were in a food court, and one of the customers looked at me with a funny look. Did you know those are non-rechargeable? I said, "Yeah, yeah, I do this all the time." Just as I say that, one of the batteries explodes, and the guy gave me a dirty look. And it's my fortune that it exploded the one time somebody decided to say something about it. I have been traveling in Poland and I had arrived at the airport and I needed to look up something on my computer. And to my dismay, not only was my computer dead, but I looked at the wall and I discovered this was my first time traveling in Poland. I discovered that they don't use the kind of outlets that we do. And but I discovered that I had a little bit of a hack. I looked in my suitcase and realized I had a bunch of gear because I love working with this stuff. And I also had a bunch of aluminum foil from all the baking chocolate that I was eating. It's usually wrapped in aluminum foil. So I put on my electrical gloves and I took some aluminum foil and I jammed them into the outlet and I connected them to the outlet of my laptop. And to my surprise, the laptop turned on. And I started, I got excited. Not only did I pull up the information I needed for the hotel room, I got excited and I was surfing away and as if nothing were amiss. Next thing I knew, I pick up the laptop and I accidentally caused the wires to cross and it shorted out and it caused the power to go out in the area of the terminal I was in. Everybody gave me a dirty look and didn't turn so badly though. I eventually got to the hotel, and when I asked around, I went to a nearby store to ask around on where to buy such a device, and I had a really good conversation. You know, I love hitting on girls when I travel to Europe, and I had a really good conversation with a girl as a result of needing to look for that device. So it wasn't the end of the world, and plus I almost blew up an airport. I had another funny situation while flying one time. I was living out of my car at this point, and I needed to travel to Tokyo for a Computer Olympiad conference. And I had called around to look for valet parking. Gotta understand, when you live out of your car, everything you own is in your car. You want to make sure your car's safe if you're going to go away for 2, 3 weeks. So I was checking around. I finally found a place that I thought was safe, but I got baited and switched. What had happened was when I got there, they told me that the parking lot was full and I needed to park in this other lot. I was very upset because I had done a lot of homework on where to go. When I got to the new parking spot, I wanted to rearrange my car a little bit so it wouldn't look like there was anything valuable in there, right? And then I started to panic because, like I say, I love working with chemistry. I was tutoring chemistry at this time. I often love to demonstrate these things. I had a lot of chemical gear and obviously, some of that would really be a bad idea to bring to an airport. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have anything in my bag. As I'm looking through my bag and very carefully examining, I couldn't find this bottle of explosive powder that I had. I really wanted to make sure that wasn't in my bag. And the valet parking attendant was very upset at me for taking so long. He was very impatient. He kept coming back. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? I really wanted to find that package of potassium chlorate. I didn't know where it was. I thought for sure it wasn't in my bag, but I really wanted to know where it was. And he kept interrupting me. I was so upset. And finally, I had to leave, not knowing where the potassium chlorate was. And I thought when I passed the TSA checkpoint, I thought for sure they would find it. And I held my breath and thank God, nothing. I never found the potassium chlorate. Not in the bag, not in my car. It just disappeared. Perhaps my student stole it or something. After all, kids can be curious with that kind of stuff, right? It disappeared. Anyway, that's my life as a scientist sometimes. A lot of ups and downs, but a lot of distraction from all the dramas of everyday life, right? Let's face it. Sometimes I run into drama. Right now, my car's broken down. I run into dating drama. Sometimes this stuff kind of acts as a diversion away from it. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.